the story of the blue light. Once there was a woodcutter who lived right beside the edge of a very large forest with his 3 daughters, Emily, Ella, and Lisa. Now the woodcutter had not always been a woodcutter. Before his wife had died, he had been a farmer, and they grew corn on the farm. Now the girls had hair that was just like their mother's, pale and silky, just like the corn silks that were on that corn that grew on the farm. Well, the father knew that he had to do something to support his family, and so he became a woodcutter. He would go out into the woods every day and he would cut wood, and Emily, who was the oldest, would make lunch and bring it to him and help him carry the wood back. And then at the end of the week, the family would take the wood into the market and sell it. Now the other 2 girls, Ella and Lisa, helped their sister Emily do the chores around the house while their father cut the wood. They would sweep the floor and wash the dishes and do the laundry and tend the garden. So on this particular day, the woodcutter went out into the woods like he always did, and the girls stayed home and did their chores. Emily made the lunch as she always would and wrapped it up and told the 2 sisters that she would be back with their father, helping him carry the wood at the end of the day. So she went out and took her father his lunch. After a while, the father returned, but he was alone. The father came up to the 2 girls who stayed home and said, "Girls, where is Emily? She never brought my lunch." Well, Ella and Lisa knew that she had. "Father, she did. She made your lunch like she always does, and she left around the same time she always does." Oh, the woodcutter was just beside himself, so he dropped everything and he ran out into the forest to look for her. Lisa and Ella stayed home and worried, but they decided they would make dinner, and then that way when Emily got home, there'd be a nice dinner waiting for her. So the 2 girls made dinner, and it started getting later, so they sat down together, and just as they sat down about to eat, Ella heard her father's axe. Oh, thank goodness, that's Father's axe. That must mean that he has found Emily, and he must be chopping wood to make up for lost time, and that way we can take it to the market at the end of the week. Now, Lisa, I want you to stay here. I'm going to wrap up this dinner, and I'm going to take it out into the woods so that Emily has something to eat. You know she's starving. Well, Lisa agreed, so Ella wrapped it up and went out into the woods to take her sister and her father some food. It was starting to get dark, and Lisa was waiting a long time, and then it got darker, and so she waited out on the porch. And just then she saw her father coming right out of the woods, and she ran to meet him. She wanted to see Emily and Ella and make sure they were okay. But her father came out with his head down, and he was alone. "Oh, Father," Lisa said, "did you not find Emily?" "No, and where's Ella?" Her father noticed that her sister was gone. "Oh, Father, we heard your axe, and Ella just knew that meant you had found Emily, and so she wrapped up dinner to bring to you and to Emily because we knew she'd be hungry." Well, her father was absolutely devastated by this news. But it had gotten so dark, there was no way that he could go back out into the forest and even make his way back. So he told Lisa, "Lisa, I'm going to go out first thing in the morning. Maybe they found each other, and maybe they're just hunkered down by a tree or in a cave or something, and I'm going to go find them." Well, the 2 of them hardly slept that night, but the woodcutter got up the next morning and did just as he had said. But before he left, he looked right at Lisa and he said, "Now, Lisa, this is very important. I want you to hear me. I need you to stay at home. You are a good girl and you know how to behave and to be obedient. And I need you to stay home, and then that way, when your sisters are found, we'll all be together, and if they come home and I'm not here, you will be." Well, Lisa thought that made a lot of sense, and so she promised, yes, she would stay home. And her father told her that he was going deeper into the forest than he had been in quite some time, and that he might be gone quite a while. Lisa said she understood, and she agreed she would do her chores and Ella's chores and Emily's chores so that they didn't have to worry about it when they got home. So the father took out into the woods, and Lisa did just as she said she would. She did all of her chores, all of Ella's chores, and all of Emily's chores. But the time passed pretty quickly, and still she didn't have anything else to do. She'd already tended to the garden and done all of the other things. And she started worrying, and she decided, well, if either of the sisters were here, they would make lunch, so I'm going to go ahead and make lunch, although she wasn't very hungry. She made the lunch and she sat down at the table to eat it, and she just sat there thinking, and as she did, she heard very faintly, way off into the woods, her father's axe. Oh, that's got to mean the father found Emily and Ella, and that he's just trying to make up that time that we've lost getting wood for the market. I know I promised I would stay home, and I am a good girl, and I am obedient, but I know that my sisters are so hungry, and I know that Father is too. He hasn't eaten much in the last few days. So Lisa decided to wrap up the food and go out into the woods. Now she knew if she went out into the woods, she could listen for her father's axe, and then she could just figure out where he was and find them. She walked a little ways and she would stop. When the axe sounded like it was this way, she would move this way, and when the axe sounded like it was coming from this direction, she would move in that direction. But then all of a sudden she realized that no matter where she moved, it seemed like the axe never got any closer. So she stopped and listened. And just as she stood there, the sound of the axe completely stopped. She didn't know what to do, so she thought, I'll just wait a few minutes. But still, the sound didn't come. Oh, she didn't know what to do, and it was definitely getting dark, and she wasn't sure where she was now, and she didn't know the woods very well. She decided to sit down at the stump of a tree and just wait and think, and she remembered, I have food. The food that I packed. And so she took the food out and she was eating it and trying to decide what she was going to do before all the wild animals would come out for the night. And just then she kind of saw through the trees there was a little blue light. She stood up and looked, and yes, it looked like a blue light. Well, Lisa decided to just maybe follow the light and just see what it was, and so she took a few steps and a few more and a few more until she was in a clearing. And inside that clearing, there was a house. And the house had a little blue light in the window. Oh, she was so relieved there were people they would help her. So Lisa decided to run up to the door, and she knocked on the door. And when she did, a man came to the door and opened it. Hello? Hi, my name is Lisa, and I'm so sorry to just come up to your house, but I'm lost in the woods and I don't know my way home, and I saw your little blue light and I just knew that you would help me. Well, yes, come in and get warm, said the man. I've just put some soup on. You can come in and have some soup. It will warm you up. So Lisa went in and sat down and thanked the man. The man put a bowl of soup in front of her, and as Lisa ate it, the man looked at her and said, You look familiar. Aren't you one of the daughters of the woodcutter? Oh, yes, I am. My name is Lisa. I'm the youngest of the three. Oh, I know just where you live, the man said. Now, certainly it is too dark to take you home tonight, but in the morning I can take you home. You can stay here tonight. I'll make you a pallet with some blankets by the fireplace. Oh, thank you, said Lisa, and she finished her soup. After they had eaten and they had washed the dishes, the man went to the closet and he got some blankets and made a pallet for Lisa in front of the fireplace. He told her good night and went to bed in his own bedroom. And then she slept through the night. She got up the next morning and the man was making breakfast. Good morning, he said. Good morning, said Lisa. Now, I've made you some breakfast, said the man, but I do have an errand I need to do before I take you home. So you sit in here and you eat this breakfast and I'll go do my errand and then I'll be back and I'll take you home. Thank you so much, said Lisa. Now I need to tell you, I would like for you to stay around the house. If you want to go out on the porch, you can do that, but no further. I have some storage sheds in the back of the house, and I do not want you to bother anything in those storage sheds. Oh yes, yes, I will stay here. I'll wait for you, and I'll be so happy to go home. Thank you so much. So the man left on his way to do his errands, and Lisa finished her breakfast, and because of his kindness, washed the dishes, and decided she'd tidy up a little bit. She went to the closet to get a broom, and she got the broom out and swept the floor, and she remembered that the man said that she could go out on the porch, so she went out on the porch and swept the porch and kind of peeked around the side of the porch, and she saw the storage sheds over there like the man had mentioned. She thought, well, he said he didn't want me to bother anything in there, but surely it wouldn't hurt if I just kind of, walk over there and just see what they look like. So she walked over to where the storage sheds were, and when she did, she noticed there were padlocks on all of them. Now, why would anybody need padlocks on storage sheds out in the middle of the woods, she wondered. And they looked like regular storage sheds to her. She thought about it and she decided, I'm going to go back in the house, I'm going to take this broom back in and I'll put it away and I'll wait for the man to return. So she went back in the house and she took the broom and she put it back in the closet. But just as she was putting it back, she looked up and she saw a nail. And on the nail was a silver ring. And on the silver ring was one key. Well, she started thinking about the padlocks on those storage sheds and she thought it might fit. Now, he told me not to bother anything in those storage sheds, but he didn't say I couldn't just peek in. So she decided to take the key and she went back to the storage sheds and she tried each padlock, but every time she put the key in it wouldn't turn until she got to the very last of the storage sheds. She put the key in, it turned, and the padlock popped open. Well, she remembered he didn't want her to bother anything, so she decided she would just peek inside. So she opened the door and peeked in the storage shed and couldn't really make anything out because her eyes hadn't adjusted to how dark it was in there. And opened it a little bit more and noticed that the floor looked like it might be damp. She couldn't tell what that was. And then she noticed there was a basket by the door and it looked like it had corn silks in it. But why would he keep corn silks? Nobody keeps corn silks. They just throw them out and he's got them in a storage shed. She got a better look and the sunlight shone on it a little bit better and she realized that wasn't corn silks at all. That was human hair. And then she noticed that it wasn't just human hair, but it was the hair of her sisters. And in that basket were two heads. It was the heads of her sisters. She was shivering and shaking. She didn't know what to do. And she saw, just as the door flew open from the wind, that on the back wall were two bodies. They were the bodies of her sisters that were attached to the back wall of the sheds. Oh, she just realized the man might come home and he might find her standing there and then she was really going to be in trouble. She didn't know what to do. She had to think quickly. So she closed the storage shed and she put the lock back on and she ran all the way back in and she put the silver ring back on the nail and she sat down and she thought. She knew he'd be coming home soon and she knew if she ran out into the woods that there's no way she could get away from him. She didn't know the woods very well. And just then the man returned. She tried to be as calm as she could. The man walked in the room and he said, "Now, Lisa, have you been a good girl as you said you would?" "Oh, yes, I washed the dishes and I swept the floor and I tidied up a little bit." "Yes, but did you go in those storage sheds I told you to stay away from?" "Oh, I know. You told me to leave those alone, not to bother those. I was a good girl. I tidied up and did chores around the house." "Yes, but did you go in those storage sheds? I know you told me not to. I stayed on the porch and I did chores." "Let me see your hands," said the man. So Lisa didn't know what he could be looking for on her hands. She wasn't going to argue, so she went over and held out her hands and he turned them over and looked. "Maybe you are a good girl," he said. "Now I would like for you to sit down and hold up your feet." Again, Lisa had no idea what he could be looking for, but she was going to obey. So she sat down in the chair and she held up her feet. And the man held them and looked at them and said, "You are not a good girl. You are a bad girl. You went into those storage sheds. You have bloodstains on your feet." Well, at that, Lisa knew that he knew what she had seen. And she jumped up and she ran off into the woods, and she didn't know where she was going to go, but she knew she had to get away from him. She ran and she ran, and she zigged and she zagged. She didn't know where she was going to end up. She would hide behind a tree, and just as soon as she would think that she had gotten away from him, she'd see him and she'd start to run again until she tripped over a branch. She laid still. She didn't hear anything. Just then, the man scooped her up and dragged her all the way back to his house and to the storage sheds and to the very last storage shed, and there he killed her. He went back to his kitchen, he cleaned up. He turned that blue light back on in the window. He chopped some vegetables for soup. And just as it was finishing, he heard a knock on the door. "Hello?" He opened the door. "My name is Hannah. I saw your blue light in the window, and I'm lost in the woods. Can you help me?" "Why, sure," said the man. "Come in. I've just made some soup." And that's the story of the blue light.